Hi everyone, this is Akhil Devdala and this is a short presentation on my paper on synthesizing behaviorally grounded reasoning chains. In this paper, I present a data generation framework for personal finance query resolution. So the presentation can be divided into 7 key stages. First, I'll be focusing on the key problem statement that I actually started with, and slowly I'll explain on why I chose personal finance and what methodology that did I use and the results that I have obtained. So the key question that I first started exploring this uh, behavioral integration into the reasoning is was to just get a overall understanding of how we can improve the performance of large language models to answer open-ended questions. So when I say open-ended questions, these questions are the questions where the overall responses are subjective or context dependent or region dependent. And of course, like for those kinds of questions, personal finance is one of the best choice. Why is personal finance the best choice? Well, for the first and most important reason is the fact that the impact of a person's psyche on the person on their financial decisions is a field that has been extensively studied and and has multiple empirical studies published for the society. And second is the fact that we can easily access hundreds of thousands of personal finance queries across the web, each with its own unique problem, each with its own unique dilemma, targeting a different aspect of personal finance. So with that as the background, it is now time to dive into what the paper actually does. So at its core, the paper does two key things. First, we define a modular framework which we follow to generate a reasoning chain and a response for a personal finance query. Second, we test the utility of this framework by generating a small sample data set and fine tuning a model on this. So now what is this modular framework that I spoke about? The modular framework is nothing but just a chain of synthetic generation spread across 4 different stages. The first stage starts from the query analysis, where the user's query is broken down into tiny bits of information, and the key bits of information is extracted from that, which means the uh, key personal finance dilemma is extracted, and the key stakeholders are identified, and the severity of the impact of the decision is also highlighted. Now that the user's query has been broken down, we have a clear idea on what context or what information we have to retrieve to make it financially grounded. And that is what the second stage does. It uses the key information from the query breakdown and retrieves all the past like behavioral studies and the financial information that is relevant to the user's key ask. With these two being the common steps, the third step is where we try to incorporate the behavioral signals from the user's query. So this is what we call the psychological intent extraction or integration. And finally, all the information from these three key stages is like combined and like organized into a structured guideline, which is then used to generate the chain of thought and response pairs. Now the utility of this framework can be evaluated in multiple ways. Like we can just take the raw output from this framework and like compare it with the generic responses from the chat gpts or geminis of the world, or uh, we can actually measure the utility of this by conducting a completely controlled experiment where we take a smaller model, fine tune that model on the data set that we have generated, and compare that performance with the models in the similar scale. For this project, I chose the second approach, where I have just created a small sample 19,000 sample data set, and I have fine tuned the Qwen3 8B parameter model on that 19,000 samples. With that fine tuned model, I have compared its responses across different models responses like the Gemma 27B, the QWQ32B, or the Gemma 12B, the Mistral 24B, etc. And we have ranked each response, uh, considering the family bias, the positional bias, and every known biases, using LLM as a judge framework. And unsurprisingly, we have found that like integrating behavioral signals does improve the plausibility and relevance of the responses generated by the fine-tuned model compared to the direct or raw responses from models. However, when we broke down like what domains actually, what kind of queries actually benefited from this behavioral signals, we found that insurance, budgeting, planning, and savings and retirement are the five key types of questions that have extensively seen a benefit from the behavioral signals. Whereas the fact based domains like the tax queries or like general information related queries have seen little to no gain from the behavioral signals in the reasoning chain. With that out of the way, we also like just uh, made a basic like cost and time efficiency report where we have found that this like fine tuning approach like has saved us around at least 80% of the costs, while also saving us while also performing around 1.7 to 1.8 times faster than the Geometry 12B model. Now, with that key results and like general overview in the mind, it is now time to explore the future directions in which I am planning to expand this project. So the first and the key important thing is to first evaluate the larger or the first and like the highest or like or the farthest goal is like trying to expand the same study into other auxiliary domains which also benefit from the behavioral signal integration. Some of these examples are like the legal advisory domains or the moral dilemma resolution or like the general health queries like diet planning or day-to-day routine planning, etc. With that as the long-term goal, there are different kinds of short-term experiments that have to be done, from the scale and decomposition studies varying the complexity of the behavioral signals, and also trying to impact the analyzing the impact of these behavioral signals on the accuracy of the responses we have generated. This is like a high level overview on my current checkpoint and the future directions of my work. With that, I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity, and thanks for staying till the end.